just throw it out the window. Well, on. Let me turn that piece off. Good
All right. Well,
morning.
thank you. Thank you. So here we go. Here we are, part two, trying to figure out how to make ourselves safe from electromagnetic field.
Good morning. And I'm Dr. Maria Coffman. I'm I'm an osteopathic physician and have worked in the field of integrative medicine and osteopathic manipulation for the last 20 and 30 years. I did some emergency medicine before that. And one of my great interests right now is environmental health and building biology. And an aspect of that is EMFs. Our last visit together, we talked about what an electromagnetic field is. And Magda, just for help and clarity, I'll pop up that little image I had of the share screen here. Share screen. There it is. And this will just give us a brief visual overview. I think that's working. There we go. And on the left side of the screen, I think I can make it a little wider here. No,
If I may say something while you are widening the screen, this kind of reminds me where the infrared saunas were very popular, and I was kind of exploring if you should get one because I love saunas and it's kind of something didn't feel right from the beginning. I tried it few times and I just felt like I'm sitting in the microwave. So even the layman feelings to me were like, this doesn't really, this
yes,
doesn't feel healthy.
yes. I appreciate that, Magda. It's very interesting. You know, we'll look at this in a moment. Sauna is wonderful, but sauna was originally in a cold environment in the north,
Yeah.
outdoors, no
Fire,
electrical
wood.
fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no electricity in the sauna room. It would be an outdoor hut, like a camping type of hut. There would be no electricity. There'd be no electrical field to go with that. There'd be no magnetic field and no radio frequency. And right, you'd have wood and stones and water and earth, fresh air. I mean, it's
Hmm.
lovely. That's a whole different sauna experience from what we have offered today. And there are quite a few of these of the infrared saunas I've seen. Um, I've taken my meters into a friend had an infrared in her home, and I was curious because there are some really well demonstrated benefits of infrared, near infrared, and far for different depths of penetration and health benefits for our tissues. And that one was a little bit older, and it did not have LED in it. It had the incandescent style of infrared uh, light. So I'm sure the electrical fields are really high, but I was measuring the magnetic field in there, and it wasn't too bad. Um, and I didn't feel too bad in it. So I'm like, maybe I'm not going to do this every day, but I'll, it was interesting to try it, just a 15-minute try. Um, but I have measured it in other infrared saunas that it was very high. And of course, the electrical fields are going to be high because they're wrapped in that
Hmm.
wire with it. So yeah, quite an astute perception there. And today's presentation is really going to be about how we can um, be educated, measure to an extent, and then mitigate. But as we go from there, I really want to bring the other side up, which is what can we do with our bodies and our lifestyle to continue to detox, whether it's the EMFs or the other toxins. It's never just the whatever the issue is, never just the mold, it's never just the EMFs, it's never just the the foods and so forth, or air qualities, but it's this entire load of toxin and how our body needs to detox on a daily basis. So I'd like to touch some of those points. And what I love about what you just said is that one might even call that an intuitive sense of it didn't feel well. It's not, it's much more tangible than that. It doesn't have to be intuitive versus logical. It just, you knew how you felt when you went in, you knew how you felt when you were in there, and how you got out. So we pick up a lot more information than we let ourselves sometimes process. And I think that's really important that you brought up that. So the image we have up here on the shared screen is a little image of the electromagnetic spectrum. You might find this in the physics book. Toward the left side of the screen, we see electrical written on the top. And electrical fields in the US were 60 hertz, or 60 cycles per second of alternating electrical current, you see. So the wave goes up, it's that midline, it goes down, it comes back up. To get one cycle, sorry, we can make a flat line there. To get one cycle of all the way up, all the way down, and back to the starting point it's called a wavelength. For electricity, the length of that curve is just mind-blowing for me. It gives a better idea than what's on the page. The length of that curve stretches from the east coast of the US to the west coast. Some of us have driven parts of that, and we get the idea of that vastness. But if you can imagine, that's one wavelength of electricity, USAC. And as we move toward the center of the spectrum here, we run into the tighter waves called radio waves. And radio waves are any waves that can carry information from one place to another through the air, like our radios. It's also like our cell phones and monitors, and any other good suggestions on there. Our microwave ovens are actually very high in radio wave and magnetic fields. The visible light spectrum starts to show up about halfway across the spectrum as well. And you're going to see that written on the bottom. Infrared, a little longer wavelength. And then our visible light, like the rainbow, starting with red, orange, yellow, and so forth, to violet. And then toward the right, the ultraviolet. And we hear about that with skin exposure and burning and skin damage. Keep going to the right, and the waves get shorter and shorter, and eventually we're up into the millimeter wave range. And some of that technology is happening now on our cars. We have millimeter wave technology for the sensors. If you've driven in a newer car in the last 5 years, and all the lights and flashing, there's a car beside you, there's one behind you, there's one over there. Quite a bit of excitement with all of these things. And those are the millimeter wave technology sensors. They'll look like just a little flat button around the bumper areas of cars. We really don't have a lot of data on the physiologic effects of millimeter wave at this time. There's some concern with the safety of that long term, and how close you want to be. It actually takes a slightly different meter to measure those. They're so tiny. And we have a radio frequency meter that goes up, kind of starts to approach that end of things. But when we get into the millimeter wave, it usually requires a separate meter for that. All right. It's me and you. So if you get any questions, Magda, please say something. We'll see.
Well,
We'll
I was
share.
just, this made me want to return to my high school physics, because at one time I used to be really good at it, but like my field is not physics, and it's easily forgotten. And when I saw your resources you emailed me yesterday, it really wanted me to dive back into it. My like
Good,
on my
good.
on my list is like medical DNA and kind of the ancestral DNA, how we moved from Africa. I said when I retire, this is what I'm going to study. which is kind of not too far away. And then
Right.
another thing is like this is really, I think, important topic in our life, you know?
Yes, I've had a lot of fun brushing up on my physics as well. It's been a really good time with it. I'm going to move this forward. I think you sent out the um, this
Yes.
list
Yes.
here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to pull that up so that when we get back, so people may just have some references with this. How do I, here, okay, stop share. All right, we'll go to stop share for a moment and just get this
Mm-hmm.
this way. So I think it'd be great to actually talk and maybe even do a thing or two that can help our bodies be in their health promoting healing state, which helps us to detox and have some resilience to the toxins in our world, in our homes, and in our workplaces. One of the first things we can really do is help the balance between vagus nerve and sympathetic. So parasympathetics and sympathetic nervous system. They work together. Sometimes they're both activated. Sometimes they're both pretty calm and cool. But in general, we think of that parasympathetic as being the rest and digest portion of the autonomics. When I say autonomic nervous system, I'm speaking about the things that happen through our body that we don't have to, let's say manually, but mentally run. So our breathing, our heart rate, our digestion, our cellular physiology, respiration at the cellular level, and so forth. So the autonomic nervous system, parasympathetics, nice rest and digest, and the sympathetics, we've all heard of the fight, flight, or fright and freeze. And the idea was that that sympathetic nervous system would activate in the event of a high need. Usually they talk about the lion coming at us, and it's like, oh, you're just having a good day and in your camp and making food, and the lion enters the camp. You need to be able to drop everything and activate and get out of there, or jump or something. But it's meant to turn back. It's meant to tone down quickly right after. Let the parasympathetics come forward. Let the breathing normalize. Let the eyes and the pupils normalize. Let the digestion receive some vascular vessel oxygen back into the digestion so the organs can start working again. The easiest ways to do this are there are several vagus nerve activation techniques. I'm gonna pick which one we want to do right now. I think, yeah, I can only think of the one I really want to do. So we'll do one right now. And this one is a little activation by releasing the area at the base of the skull and the top of the cervical spine. We can get a much better easy range of motion to left and right. The vagus nerve comes right out of the bottom of the brain here and drops down the back of the neck. It goes out to run heart, lungs, upper gastrointestinal organs, so stomach and small intestine. So we can do this together. First, we would just relax the shoulders a little bit, and maybe I'm going to turn my head to the right until it just kind of starts to stick a little bit. And that's about it. I can push it harder, but I just want to go to see how it kind of sticks. And I'm going to come back to center. And then I'm going to assess the other side with a little turn. And stick there. And I can feel the quality of it too. It's like, is it kind of a hard end point or kind of bouncy and stretchy? Are they the same or different? All right. And now what we'll do for this next piece, in osteopathy, this is called a muscle. It's a type of a muscle energy technique by using eye movements. And my friend and colleague in Netherlands brought this up. She says, oh, look at Rosenberg's first vagus nerve activation exercise online. I was like, what? So, so I looked that up. It was interesting, and it was basically this. I was like, oh, that's first year osteopathy in the U.S. or where osteopathy was born. Kind of a neat thing. So if it's comfortable to bring the arms behind the head, you can nestle the head with the nose straightened forward. And I'm going to keep my face straight forward while my eyes go up kind of to the corner of my elbow. So I'm going to look to my right elbow. With just the eyes. I had a Pavlovian now, but I do it until I get that yawn, which I did. A yawn, a swallow, or it's kind of a deep sigh that just comes. There you go. And I'll just relax with that one to the right side for a moment. We have a few breaths here, and if we weren't on video and getting through a lecture, we could go longer, but one might sit and just relax with that and then go to the other side. We'll go ahead and go to the other side now. And we'll look up to your left elbow tip. Oh, there goes the other. Well, I get that you can relax, but as you kind of keep that gaze up into the corner until you get that yawn. Yeah. That's the exercise, is the eye motion and then the relaxing. That's the exercise. But since we're kind of exploring it a little bit, we'll now just kind of turn our heads and do a pre and post assessment of, is there a little more motion or not? And many times it would be kind of surprising, get another centimeter or two of just kind of ease to the sides. So I really recommend that one. It's so simple to do, and to do it regularly, so it's a regular tool in the bag. If it's something one does in the morning when they get up to start the day, and maybe before bed, and then it's something you just know you can do. And anytime during the day, if you feel a little bit hyped up, a little intense, things are just not flowing easily, and stop, do this 1 minute exercise and have a pretty profound effect.
So
Yeah.
is yawning and singing and tapping also vagus nerve like stimulating exercise, or am I confused?
That's a great question. So yawning, so a yawn, a sigh, or a swallow are all
I mean,
things
say
that vagus.
humming, singing, and tapping.
Yeah, yeah. I'll get to those next. So the yawn, swallow, or sigh is very much vagus nerve. It's obviously they're all going to have, it's one body. It's not like we can separate our nerve out from everything else, but that's a vagus nerve response. And as you can see, it's kind of a rest and digest thing. We yawn, we get some relaxation with that. We swallow at the beginning of digestion. Humming has been shown to be so effective in increasing the nitric oxide, which is a tiny, tiny molecule that flows through our bloodstream and can actually help to dilate and expand the blood flow through the arteries. So you can dilate an artery and vein to and from. And humming is really great for that. It's also, I have read, I can't quote the study, but I believe I've read some studies with just the humming also being able to soothe vagus nerve. But I think about a lot with the nitric oxide. There are several effects for humming. It's really great, and singing. Singing versus humming for nitric oxide. Humming is the one that's showing the nitric oxide increase. What was the third one? Tapping, acupressure points. Usually the tapping is over an acupressure point, which may or may not be directly vagus nerve stimulation or activation, but it's going to have some effect on how our vagus nerve can work, because most of these are able to help bring the body and the mind sort of back together to relax that. I say that, but if there's any acupuncturists in the audience, like, well, we don't always use acupuncture points to sedate and relax things. So, that's a whole big thing. But some of these points can really help to bring the body and the mind together and help our physiology have a little more buffer, make things go well, and have a little more of that observance and astuteness that you had in the infrared sauna.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you imagine if you'd gotten in there and you were thinking about 20 other things and just kind of sitting in there and running around and with the mind, you may not have really picked up on when things felt like it wasn't a
Mhm.
good place to be
Mhm.
in.
Mhm. Mhm. It's interesting how the body is intuitive, because when you were saying about the swallowing, how when people are really nervous and stressed, when you are in an uncomfortable situation, you are kind of swallowing on empty. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. And the sympathetic nervous system doesn't want to be, when it activates, it's like, let's get out of here, right? Flight or fight. We're gonna stand up and fight, or we need to get out. And we don't need to be using the bathroom at that time. So it's not the time to digest and go have
Yeah.
a bowel movement or go urinate. We don't need to pee and poo when it's time to get rolling. And we don't need to have extra saliva to swallow. We don't need to
Mhm.
have moisture in the eyes. We need to shut all these things
Mhm.
down
Mhm.
and get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people like the mouth will get really dry when someone's feeling anxious
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hands get clammy, or you get dry mouth and clammy hands. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
how that helps, but
Yeah.
we're very good at that. Yeah, so that's our first thing we can do. I think is a wonderful technique for helping the body come into health, increasing our awareness, allowing our intuition and our left and right brain, our intuitive side and our logical side to come together and have that buffer of health building. So we know sooner when we're in a spot we shouldn't be in. You know,
Mhm.
the smoking it isn't quite as big a deal as it was many years ago. One might need to walk into a room or a building that might have a lot of cigarette smoke, and that's really decreased. And we really don't heat our homes as often with wood. But growing up, where I did in the north, it's very common to have wood heaters in homes, and there was a lot of smoke. And just kind of did that. But uh, once you know better, and your body's kind of calm, and now I walk into a smoky wood smoke home and there's a lot of smoke. I'm like, no, that my nose is running now. My eyes are red, there's coughing and so forth. It's like, why would I keep standing there? Just walk out. Um, yeah, so that's one of my favorite detox pieces. So now we can talk. I think we're a little more relaxed. We know we have at least a tool to start our day. And it helps us to look forward a little bit as to how we can reduce the EMF magnitude in our immediate homes and immediate environment. I'm going to pick out, well, let's start with that. Yeah. So I'm sure this was not my quote, but basically it's hard to dry off while you're in the shower. Um, it's the same thing. It's a little tricky to keep detoxing if we're standing in it or washing ourselves in it. That's a little tricky. So trying to avoid or reduce the amount of different toxins that we're exposed to during the day can make our detoxing a lot more effective. I'm going forward to that. So the radio frequency is what you and I kind of chatted about before we started, that it felt a little bit difficult to even step into that. Like, why even try? It's just so much. The radio frequency in our homes, the first thing we can look at is smart things. So almost all of these things that say smart meter, smart thermostat, smart refrigerator, smart baby monitors, all of these are sending information through the air at different magnitudes. So Bluetooth is one of the lower strengths or magnitudes of
Mhm.
radio frequency. It's usually not trying to go across the entire house or the, a mile away sort of thing. The next one is the Wi-Fi. And if anyone's ever purchased a Wi-Fi unit in the store, you'll see it. They come in different sizes or strengths to basically broadcast over a small area of small with 2 stories, and then you can get the biggest power one, and try to transmit through 3 stories and so forth. So use the least amount possible for your setting if you're going to use Wi-Fi, and turn it off when you're not using it. Do go to sleep at night and turn off the Wi-Fi. Perhaps turn it off a little before you go to sleep. Wind down, give the body a chance to start that detox process with, with the shower turned off, with the Wi-Fi turned off. Can be a really helpful piece with it. There are actually programs now in some Wi-Fi units that will turn themselves off, because otherwise, once you turn it on, it's just broadcasting at its strength power all day, night, whatever, all over.
Mhm.
But there are some programs now that can modulate that, and if they feel they're not, connected, or someone's not actually pulling from the Wi-Fi unit, it'll shut down. So, and once you maybe want to connect, you pick up the iPad and you want to connect, it turns back on immediately. So that's really neat. That could really help reduce our radio frequency
Uh,
exposure.
I may have mentioned it last time, but kind of one of the memorable and the best day at my house was one day I was driving home from work and we didn't have electricity in our house. So my husband put candles everywhere, and we were, I think, for 5 days we were without electricity. But it was the most calming moment in our house. Not only the ambient light from the candles and everything, but it felt different. The
Oh,
whole home
yes.
felt different because there was no electricity. And
It's amazing, isn't it? I I did that. So yeah, we'll sidestep a little bit to measure um, electromagnetic fields in a home. The first thing that's done is you shut off everything. So you go to the breaker box and turn the big breaker, or turn all the other breakers off. Um, yes, even the fridge. If you want to keep your freezer, you got to turn it back on. You're done. But you turn off all the breakers. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I didn't really have anything turned on in the home at the time. I didn't have a ceiling fan turned on. The refrigerators were running, they're on, the fridge and freezer. The I don't know, I didn't feel like I had much of anything really turned on. But when I turned it off, the silence, like the peaceful silence that you described with me, there was that. I thought, can I really hear that? Like, am I hearing the wires? I don't know. But that was down. And then like you experienced that peaceful. Oh my gosh, like sitting in nature was really profound. So that's how we do it. We turn them all off, and then we go take baseline measurements. It's like, okay, if the breaker box, if electricity's not onto this home, and therefore the smart things aren't working either, and the Wi-Fi is not going to be on, and the TV is not going to be on, the smart TV and all of these, then how low can this go versus its environment? So um, when I measure a home in a city has a cell tower nearby, there's going to be some background sound from that. No background. There's going to be radio frequency in the environment of the home from the external environments, um, devices. So yes, we turn that off, and then we do the most horrible thing: turn them all back on, which is where it was before, and then go around and turn on. So turn on every ceiling fan, which creates a magnetic field as well as increases the electrical field. Turn on all the lamps, turn on all the lights, turn on the bathroom fans, turn on the dishwasher, turn on, oh my gosh. And the intensity of it is actually, I am sensitive to EMFs. I'm not ill with it, but and some people can become quite ill, but I am sensitive to it. And a lot of people are who are quite interested in this, right? So they go to do the measurements, they're like, oh, it's the worst thing. Just turn everything on. They have to make it through the measurements. It can be pretty hard on them. Yeah, the difference is just shocking. And I know it's sort of like having some sound in the background that you just kind of get used to. I grew up in a town that had a train that came through town at 3 a.m. and it had to blow its horns on one side of town, blow it again at the intersection, blow them again when it got to the next intersection. There are only three. But the 3 a.m. and I never, after being there for a month, moving there for a month as a child, I never heard them again. I forgot they even existed until we'd have a guest from out of town who would come to the home. It's like, oh, it's so peaceful here. And then they'd wake up. It's like, oh my gosh, that train. So we sort of forget about them, but they do affect us on a physiologic level. Whether I forgot that the train was honking, tooting its horn at 3 a.m., it still affected my physiology and lighting. All right, so we've mentioned the radio frequency pieces. So basically you can look around smart things and just de-smart them. And monitors, audio monitors, smart TVs. The next one up, the microwave is a huge source of all three electromagnetic fields. Huge radio frequency fields, magnetic fields, and of course it's plugged in, it has an electrical field. So what to do with that? My family wasn't super happy with that when I took the microwave out of the house. And we were using it, I think, at times to heat water. They liked reheating a leftover here and there, and so forth. So the couple things I've done to replace that, and they're not perfect, but it's really helped us a lot. I do use the hot water kettle. It's funny, they're very common in most of the world, but they weren't so common in the US. You have coffee makers in the US, but the electric hot water kettle was much less common to find. I'm seeing them a lot more now when I get out and about. So that one is, I can turn it on. I can make some hot water to jumpstart my cooking or to make some tea and things like that. When I measure it, the magnetic fields are still pretty potent right next to it. So magnetic fields in particular drop off really precipitously as you get a little distance. So if I step back 3 to 6 feet from that kettle, I'm really in a pretty negligible zone of magnetic field. Whereas 3 to 6 feet from a microwave, and just might as well be in it. It doesn't change it that much. So just that magnitude is that high. It's pretty incredible. So those are what we did. Kind of swapped out that for our heating up water, and then and then the toaster oven became the reheat leftovers piece. Air fryers are pretty popular right now. I really haven't measured too many of them. They're basically a small convection oven. I'm staying in a little apartment today as I'm traveling, and I wish I had my meters, but there is a small convection oven piece here, air fryer, that looks more like a toaster oven, so you can actually use it like a toaster. Yeah.
I also have the hot water kettle, but if you unplug it after you use it, then there is nothing, right?
There's nothing, totally clean. Yeah. If it's plugged in and not turned on, the electrical fields can be a little strong around there. So I try to, you can either straight up unplug it. There's also a nice little gadget that just plugs into the socket, and it's a cutoff switch or a kill switch, they call it. So it has its own socket, and the plug, you stick it into the socket, and then I would plug in my device, whatever it might be, hot water kettle, on the side's going to be a little button, a little toggle switch on and off. So I don't have to kind of mess with the socket each time and try to flip it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a little switch on the side, flip it on and off. And that fills it right there, right at the wall. So there's still fields emanating from the wires in the wall, but I do get much higher readings when we have our lamps and water kettles plugged in and not turned off, or not switched off and then turned on. When the hot water kettle is plugged in and then turned on to heat the water, the magnetic fields are present and pretty strong too. So very good point though about reducing that electrical field. Yeah, so that's been the other thing I was using the microwave for in the winter was making warm packs for cold hands or feet or a sore neck or this or that. And I would put the rice bag in there to heat it up. And that was was one of the bigger things I had to switch around because we're using a lot. Well, the interesting thing was as I started reducing the EMFs around the house and also paying attention to other toxins in the environment, the amount of really cold feet issue or really cold hands issue was decreasing. And I didn't have quite as much need to have to go warm my hands up and warm my feet up. So the circulation was improving, nitric oxide was improving. I was like, well, this is good. So that became less of an issue. What I did end up doing to back that up though, because sometimes it's just nice to have a nice warm water bottle. You can get the water bottle, and I think it's even more common in Europe to have a nice hot water bottle. It used to be here growing up. All the grandmothers always had a rubber hot water bottle that could be filled with ice or heat, and you pour the hot water in. But it takes a little time. It's a little dangerous to pour the hot water in. It doesn't stay really hot. And what I found is electric hot water bottles that you heat. So I have to use electricity. There's a little water bladder with a connector, and I go and plug it in 5 minutes. The little water bottle gets nice and hot. I tuck it into its little furry bag, and the thing stays warm for 6 or 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
It's
I have to write
crazy.
it down.
Yes, they're online, some stores, I'm sure in person. If you're in town, you can find these. So electric hot water bottle. Now the gist is I'm not holding it on myself while it's plugged into the wall. So that's the good thing. And there's a switch. So when I'm done, I turn the switch off with a little plugged-in thing. So that helped us to get the microwave out a little less painfully, more painless. Here's my favorite. We mentioned the cell phones, but also home phones last time, and this one, I almost felt foolish when I realized it was great to realize where these things lurk, and they're kind of obvious, but I didn't know. So I thought, oh, well, a landline is so much better. And of course, with the kids or a busy family or office or whatever, you might like to have hands, a cordless phone so you can run from one end of the office to the other. Well, now I've got a cordless phone. That's what that means. Radio frequency has got to get the information from the base to the phone. There's no cord. There's no wire on it. You're using radio frequency. And it's actually really high. It was almost as high as my cell phone. Oh my gosh. So that's like the DECT 6.0. And finally removing that. The base emits all the time. And the handset might sit next to a bed cold with no emissions until it rings and you pick it up and then you're actually using it. So the whole time you're using it, it's a really intense field coming up. So landlines are great and they can be absolutely EMF free. But it can be very low EMF. The reason I say that is they're going to pick up, it's still going to be a little bit of wire metal wire from the wall to the phone set, and then the cord, the loopy cord of people's head. Now, it's not running electricity through it from the wall. It's not emitting radio frequency through it. There's no magnetic field, but they're usually in a home or in a building where there is radio frequency and electrical fields. And what I've recognized is those metals are going to pick up the electrical field. So there's going to be a mild, some degree of electrical field around that. And I really haven't measured that. We have a friend with a much better meter that could probably pick up the amount of it. And I've also noticed that if there's a cell phone next to a wired landline and the cell phone is transmitting, there'll be static on the landline. So you know it's picking that up too. Those pieces of it. So we want to look at those. And then how to possibly they could just lower the radio frequency magnitude on our cell phones. There are much, it could take all hour to talk about that. So I'll just let you know that that's possible. And toward the end of the lecture and so forth, we have some resources and plenty of folks talking about what one can do. Do you need the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, and the cellular internet, or cellular tower data all going at the same time? I didn't know those were three different things. I thought they all came, I just didn't know. So if we don't know, then we can't do anything about it. I don't tend to use the Bluetooth very often, so I just turn that off. Now it needs to go all the way off, and versus an Android or Apple, you need to look and see, does it turn off black? Go to your settings. It should say off and not just not turn. So sometimes you disconnect from the Wi-Fi in the building.
You mean like airplane mode or something like that?
Yeah, I actually have a cell phone. Well, I'm not going to bring up there'll be a little window up there, and you can see the airplane mode, and you can also see the Wi-Fi arches and the Bluetooth, and then the other one will be the cellular data. And you can turn off each one individually, or you can turn them all off. If you airplane and then look and make sure they're all off. In the past, airplane took care of all of them. They don't now. So now you can airplane mode your device and then connect by Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Oh, okay. You really have to check and see if you did what you thought you did.
I was telling you before we started how I needed to buy a new iPhone. Mine was really old and it didn't work on eSIM card. And I just feel like it's another college degree I am missing. But I took the introduction to iPhone class in Apple Store. It was 1 hour. And after it was over, I was like, oh my gosh, this should be like 3-week course because everything is different. Everything is so complicated. And when you buy a cell phone, which is as expensive as a monthly mortgage, you want to utilize it, to the highest potential.
Yes. Yes. And you want to know that you're doing what you think you're doing with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Especially the security settings, Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good thing to know. I didn't know they had an intro course with iPhones.
They have a lot of courses, actually. They
see a lot on YouTube and so forth.
In Apple Store, they have these courses, and you can watch it online on their website. They have a lot of kind of from the hours and hours of different courses.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive computers that we carry around in our pockets.
I know.
Yeah, back to radio frequency. It was a surprise because I went from an Android to an iPhone, and I went to push my airplane mode. I thought I was good. The things changed colors. I was like, oh, it's good. Well, it turned out they were all still on. They just disconnected, but they were just waiting to reconnect. So the emission was still there, and it didn't change a thing. So very interesting. Once again, having a little bit of a meter can be great. A good quality meter can be great. If we do have our cell phones and we have them on, and I just look at it and go, what's the least amount of radio frequency I can deal with? I can get what I need done. The cellular data is the strongest. And it just all makes sense once we pull it together. It's like the phone has a transmitter and a receiver, and it needs to transmit and receive those impulses from the tower, which I know they're getting closer to us all the time. We're still thinking it's out there. So whatever the signal has to be as strong as the tower. We don't think about these little cell phones having the magnitude of power going on with the radio frequency as a cell tower, but that's the same difference. It's why I get a little horrified when I see an infant being given a cell phone for a chew toy or a sucky toy or something. Would you put your baby on a cell tower? Would you let them? No. Yeah, they come off. So
I had a friend who put an iPad behind her newborn head playing soothing ocean music. And I was like, I don't think this is a good idea.
Right. It's wow. Yeah. Now you can get around it a little bit by turning the iPad fully into airplane mode, no Wi-Fi, this, that, and downloading the music. I probably still wouldn't put the battery right next to my baby's head. But the battery operated direct current, it's still gonna make a little bit of a field, but yeah, I just download as much as I can. Hoopla, I love my library too. Hoopla and Music Freegal, we have that one in our library. And I can download the pieces I'd like to listen to or an audiobook and not have it streaming the whole time. So that's super important, is to not be streaming. Our cell phones, if they're using the data portion and we're driving, it's kind of funny because for the longest time, like, don't use cell phones when you're driving. Because it's sort of inherent that you shouldn't be doing this or this, or you shouldn't be texting. So those are all the dangers of it. But we didn't realize the other danger is that as we go from one cellular tower connection to the next, and our bars go low and then high, the phone has to really pump out, it increases its magnitude of power to try to reach a new tower. So in our cars, it makes the exposure very high. And some people may find that that's their highest exposure, is actually driving in their car with or without the phone turned on. But many times if they have it on and they're either streaming a podcast or having a conversation hands-free, they can still be getting a really high exposure. So those can get us some thoughts to go forward with. And again, the resource list at the end, I think it would be wonderful for people to jump in and have some.
So since the cars are full of electronics, does driving in a car without the cell phone, does it cause any electromagnetic or creates any electromagnetic frequencies by itself, the car?
Yes. The newer cars are pretty loaded, including that millimeter wave technology around the exterior of the car. And I don't have a millimeter wave meter yet. There is a meter now. Safe Living Technologies has one that's similar to their Safe and Sound Pro, but this big. And last time we had a participant that showed it looked like a watch. It wasn't a watch, but it was an EMF reader for radio frequency.
David has that, the green and red.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of the trimmed down model, so you can really be portable with it. Anyway, the same company has now extended the range and made a new meter for millimeter wave technology. And so we'll be able to measure inside our cars a little more easily too. Direct current.
Maybe I will hang to my 18-year-old car much longer.
It's true. I just had to update cars, and some of my friends and I have mentioned that too. They're like, oh, our 20-year-old car plus is needing to be replaced. We're not really sure what we're going to do because of that. But remember, it's never just whatever the toxin is, never just the EMFs. The new car issue also can be an issue with the outgassing of
Uh-huh. Yes, exactly.
the furniture, basically. It's
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
furniture
And
inside.
and the artificial leather smell, they want to make it smell like a new car. So
Yes.
if I may ask, what did you end up going with?
I ended up, yes, and I haven't measured the all of the EMFs with it, but I've been able to decrease something. So basically, you want to turn off your Bluetooth so it's not emitting uh, on you the whole time. Turn off your Bluetooth. Um, so I ended up with the Honda CRV,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the reasons I ended up with it was the buying experience um, was healthy. The experience was healthy. I bought it as from a single, it had been a single owner. So I bought it used. It's 3 or 4 years old. It actually does have the sensors and so forth on it. I'm like, huh, okay, yeah. I don't live in my car. I don't drive for a living. That could be a really big deal. Somebody,
So
to
is it a
drive for.
hybrid? Did you get hybrid?
I like the hybrid because it's really nice to not be at the gas station very often. This one is not. And again, it was more how the experience came together. It was the size and shape that I needed. It's 4 years old. It's been outgassed.
Mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
was the middle model with the quote cloth seats. Um, so not as, yeah, because the new faux leather, even the luxury cars really aren't using leather now. They're using a
Mm-hmm.
synthetic that's really outgassing. Um, really outgassing. And what are the other things I liked about it? Yeah, it was one of the models that was in the running for me. And then when I could find it, 4 years old from a family that did not smoke. It didn't have water damage for possible mold, um, pets and things like that. So looking at air quality control, air quality in the vehicle, and then the experience of buying it didn't cause me a lot of stress. I didn't have to do the biggest nerve maneuvers to
Yeah.
meet this person that I'd known since she was in middle school. She was, no, I wasn't. She was in middle school with my kids many years ago. And I was like, oh, I know who that is. She was a nice kid. She's a nice young woman. I felt like I was adopting their family pet more than going through
Mm-hmm.
a used car sales and all these things. So the experience was actually enjoyable. And I felt like that was a big part of my health because buying, just the fact that we even have to talk about how to get a new car or replace our cars, it's big and it can be very
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
stressful. So
Well,
that's
years
what I
ago
do.
when I researched cars, because we haven't bought car for a long time, we always buy used cars for many reasons, whatever you mentioned. And Prius used to be the most no off-gassing and kind of in the most,
Oh,
kind of for all these indoor
yes.
environments. Those were the
Hmm.
best.
Hmm. Yes, I bet they're still quite good. I've been in a brand new Toyota though recently, um, 2 years ago. And a family member purchased, there were no used cars to buy 2 years ago,
Yes,
and
exactly, exactly.
a car had to happen. So they bought the Toyota RAV hybrid, and kind of this, you get whatever comes apparently. So there was a sport model coming. It's like, okay, you put your name on it, and it's like, okay, and you wait and hope that you like it. It was like, wow. Um, and it had they have a name for it, like a supplex type of faux leather and so forth. But I went for several rides in it, and I got in, and I knew to watch at that time. I knew to start watching for the EMFs, and I got in, and my skin was burning, burning within a few minutes of being in the car. I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt like a sunburn and almost painful. I thought, dang, is this the EMFs? And I got out a few meters, measured it for the family, and it's like, well, it's really not like it's less than it was less than some homes or business places where I didn't have my face burning. And And of course, I could smell the quote new car smell. And I thought, obviously there's off gassing. And every time I got in, I would make sure that we opened all the windows right away. Um, but that's really what it was the off gassing was that intense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we recognized later that there was, being the canary. So I describe myself many times because I do notice it right away, just like you did in infrared sauna. You're like, yeah, something's wrong. But some people don't feel it. It's like, oh, good, they're not suffering. It doesn't seem to bother them, but it probably is. So for the owner of that vehicle, they had kind of sensitive skin. The owner wasn't getting red and painful and burning while driving the vehicle. But 2 years later, we recognized that the owner was having a few more dermatology appointments due
Mm-hmm.
to outrageous bug bites that went crazy, like 2 or 3 bug bites, but then the entire side of the body was erupting, or the poison ivy, instead of just being daggone poison ivy on the hand, it would erupt all over, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks having another dermatological exposure. It's like, you know what? I think that really increased exponentially after the new car. And so not noticing it doesn't mean it didn't happen
Mm-hmm.
on any of the toxins that we may be exposed to, whether it's in our air or EMFs or our foods. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so important to have that daily cleanup time and our sleep. So when someone, I think we're getting really close. Yeah, we need to wrap.
Yes.
So when someone might look at this little list of a few sites that I found quite useful, and we're going to get to that. Let me share screen. The first focus, although we didn't do it here, the first focus is really going to be your bedroom. You really want to look at your sleep area, your sleep sanctuary, and make it that. You want things that aren't off gassing. You want your cell phone outside the room, possibly turned off. Um, make sure you don't have Wi-Fi at the head of your bed or anywhere near your room or your baby's room. So we can look at these things and really make a difference in our health from day to day. Exploring and educating is our first point to do that.
Well, all right. Well, thank you very much. This was interesting. Maybe we can continue the conversation.
I would enjoy that. Let me know what you'd
All
like.
right.
Um,
Okay.
I will
Thank
teaching
you.
about health. Thank you.